Rev up your engines! Here we got a 2012 Sienna van. It's got a good story. It shows that Toyota makes great vehicles, but unfortunately, the dealerships here in the United States are often far from treating their customers correctly. Now, my customer, he bought this car brand new and he loves it. He's got 100-something thousand miles on it. But last year, he took it to a Toyota deal for servicing, and they said, you need your rear differential replaced or rebuilt for thousands of dollars, and it's unsafe to drive it that way. Trying to scare him into spending all that money. Now, my wife's brother, he had one, and they tried to ream him in Houston, Texas with a power steering pump. He had it for 10 years. They said, you need a power steering pump. So they ordered it, but it never came, or they never called him. 2 years later, he was still driving the thing around and had no problems at all. And that was like a $600 repair. This thing would have been thousands. So, not trusting him, they took it to an independent mechanic who said, there's nothing wrong with the rear end or the differential. And this was a year ago. And you needed struts in the back because they're worn out. So, he put the struts on, but he didn't touch the differential. See, it's still the original differential under here. He's got new shocks on the back of springs, but the differential is still the same as it was a year ago. And realize this is a limited all-wheel drive. A lot of them are just front-wheel drive, but this is all-wheel drive front and rear, and they told them the rear diff was going out and it was dangerous. A couple weeks later, after that worked, they took it to a different Toyota dealer who looked up the paperwork that had been done at Toyota. They got it on computers. And what did they say? It didn't need anything. There was nothing wrong with the differential. Now, these Toyota dealerships were like 20, 30 miles apart. It just shows that just because they're a dealership doesn't mean they're going to treat you honestly, that they're going to give you a fair deal. Now, the second guy, granted the Toyota, whoever owned that Toyota dealership, they were doing the fair thing. But the first dealership, they out and out lied to the guy. Kind of reminds me of when I was back in Houston and that old lady bought the Toyota Tacoma made in Mexico, and they hit her for 12 grand more than it was supposed to be sold for, and they said, ah, too bad you signed the paperwork. But then after old Scotty made a video on it, the next day she goes in and they gave her a check for $12,000, saying, oh, this was all one big mistake. This is the same dealership that said there's nothing we can do about it, you signed the paperwork. But after I made the video, magically she got her $12,000 back. Here the owner was very smart. He didn't take their word for it for that kind of money. He went someplace else and found out he didn't need that work done at all. And that's a big deal. That's why you have to not trust anybody these days when you're getting your car worked on if they're trying to sell you expensive stuff. And to me, it kind of amazes me because sometimes I get people go to a dealership and they'll tell them they need $6,500 worth of work. And it'll be on a car that's worth maybe $2,000. I mean, to me, it's just like they're crooks, but they're foolish crooks because nobody's going to spend that money. You'd think they could maybe hit them for $1,000 or $800, but no. They make these inflated prices up, and in this case, they completely made it up. Here we go from the second dealer. They say, inspected drive shafts, found a little play, inspected the rear differential and differentials operating as designed. So here we go around, and what do I hear in the rear end? I don't hear anything. There's nothing wrong with the differential whatsoever. Now, of course, if you watch any of my videos, the Toyota Siennas are really the best vans in the world. There's no arguing that. The only thing that I've ever seen go wrong with them is some of them as they age. The intermittent steering shaft goes bad and you got to replace it, and it's $1,000-something job. But this one doesn't have enough mileage for that yet, and it's not really worn out. They just basically tried to rip them off for a very expensive differential when it didn't need any work done at all. So realize, just because you buy a dependable car, it doesn't mean you're not going to get high repairs with dishonest shops. I have seen this happen so many times. I even had a guy come to me once. He said, I'm getting rid of my Toyota Corolla. It was the worst car I ever had. I kept having to spend all this money on repairs. So I checked out the car. It turns out that probably none of them ever needed doing. If you got a Toyota Corolla, I've seen them with 300,000 miles, and the only thing I ever done was oil changes and brake jobs. That is it. Some of them didn't even change the transmission fluid, and they were still running perfectly fine. So don't let people sell you into things, thinking that, oh, I'll take it to the dealer. They do good work, and they know what they're talking about. These guys have millions of dollars of overhead. who pays it? You as the customer. So they'll just make stuff up, and I see it all the time, unfortunately. Usually it's not this bad where they tell you you need thousands of dollars repair on a rear end when there's absolutely positively nothing wrong with it. But still, you ever get a big quote, find somebody who's honest. He was lucky he had an independent mechanic who said no, and then the other Toyota dealer agreed, probably because he found out that the independent mechanic said there's nothing wrong and it would make him look bad if he said yes, the other dealer was right. So you still got to know somebody who knows what they're talking about. But don't take anybody's word as gospel on any car with any repair, especially a Toyota that doesn't break, unless you have a really serious problem. And even then, you want it analyzed correctly. If you see my video, finding a source of car noises, if you get a device like that that's got 4 sending units, you put one in different parts of the car, then you put on the headphones and drive it, and you click 1, 2, 3, 4 sensors and listen to the noise until you pinpoint where the noise is from. Always have that done if somebody tells you need something like a transmission or rear end. I've seen it where guys wanted to sell a differential for thousands of dollars. It was an axle bearing. The axle bearing was like $40, and yeah, the labor's like maybe $200, but it's not thousands of dollars. So always make sure they're not trying to sell you something that you don't need, that's super expensive. Because look at the Sienna. The leather seats are still in good shape. The car's in excellent shape. Why would you want to get rid of a car that runs that good? They were just hoping that they could sell them an expensive repair because they liked the vehicle. I mean, I've seen these things with 500,000 miles on them, right? And this is like 150, so it's got a lot of life left in it. But they just thought, oh, well, it's so nice inside and everything. Let's see how much they can gouge them for. I mean, it just amazes me, but that's the world these days, so always get a second opinion on any major repair. And if it has to go that far, the device that I have for finding sound, you can get them on eBay used for 60 bucks. You can buy a new one for $140. It might even be worthwhile buying one. They got magnets on them. You can stick them on different parts of the car, and you can find out where the noise is coming from so you won't get ripped off. And as a postscript, they just told me they took it back to the original Toyota dealer who said the rear end was bad, and they reiterated, those other guys are idiots. The rear end is bad, it's dangerous, and they said they put the shocks on wrong in the back. Well, I looked at them. They're certainly fine. They've been driving it over a year that way. They have no problem. So this is like, if everybody remembers old Richard Nixon, he was the master of the big lie, that if you just keep lying, then you can get away with it. So I guess that Toyota dealer, they must have been Nixon fans because they just kept the big lie going. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Pychromancer says, what do you think of the Mazda engines? You know, they started out making Sky Active, they started making better and better. Toyota owns some of Mazda, now they're mixing all their stuff together. Hey, they make great vehicles. Now they're much better than they used to be. You're going to pay for them. There's very high technology in them, but they get great gas mileage. They have a lot of pickup. And I mean, they got a factory now, I believe it's in Alabama someplace, where Toyota and Mazdas are made on the same assembly line. It's a joint effort. So they make really good vehicles these days. Yes, Scotty, do you think a 1960s Ford Econoline for $2,000 is a good buy? Well, if it's not all rusted out, check the frame first. If the frame's rusted, it's a piece of junk, it's worth nothing. Those things are starting to get somewhat popular, and they were very simple. Econolines were very simple to work on. Parts are still easy to get. You want a van to fix up? That'd be a great project van. Or let's say it still runs good and you want it as a knock-around van? That can be fun too. But do check the frame. If it's rotted out, don't buy it. It's worth nothing if the frame's rotted out. And those things rotted out like mad up north when I lived up there as a kid. LV says, help, I work in Austin. My family lives in El Paso. I want a mid-sized truck with great fuel economy. Toyota Tacoma or Chevy Colorado. Well, I love the Tacomas. They're the best. But gas mileage-wise, I got bring me one of those Colorados with the diesel, driving from Kentucky to Tennessee to visit me. And I was totally impressed by the vehicle. I'm normally not impressed at all. The Toyota Tacoma will run forever, but they're not that great on gas mileage. You're going to get 10 miles a gallon better with the Colorado diesel than you will with the gasoline Tacoma. That's just the way that it goes. Stuart Bell says, hey Scotty, hello from Scotland. Well, I'm part Scottish, obviously. My name's Scotty. Well, guess what? That's the Atlantic Ocean behind me. You want to get in your boat and sail over here to Rhode Island? Be my guest. Got a huge dock you can tie up on here. You can have a good time. Bring some whiskey, though. I like Scottish whiskey, you know? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.